BioShock's splicers are complicated. These poor sods are drug-addicted citizens who have been deformed by plasmid use. Listen when you're walking amongst the ruined Rapture and you can hear them in the distance, not spouting gargled roars or clicks, but sometimes crying. Most of them lament the inequalities and broken promises of Rapture which led them to said drug use, and even their choices aren't their own. Andrew Ryan, the tyrant founder of Rapture, is using pheromones in the air to force them into attacking you. These tragic enemies are societal issues made manifest, and cannot help but be woke. Wait, just wait. Look. I know what you're thinking. Using the word woke in a video in 2025 is just asking for trouble, but traditionally, to be woke is to be aware of societal issues. That is literally the definition, regardless of the tone it's often imbued with online, so to be woke, in my opinion, is a good thing. BioShock was ahead of its time for its sympathetic portrayal of splicers, the game's main enemy. These people don't just try to beat or shoot you to death. They have been designed to be more than two-dimensional obstacles that prevent you moving through Rapture with ease. Listen to what they say both outside of and during combat. Look at the tattered clothes they wear and you can hear how they were broken by Rapture and why they became victims of its siren song. These reasons shed light on Rapture's societal issues that mirror those found in our own world. If BioShock were to come out in 2025, I believe that it would most definitely be called woke. The word woke didn't exist back in 2007, but even so, BioShock was ahead of its time for its sympathetic portrayal of splicers, the game's main enemy. It's important to understand that people aren't forced to splice in Rapture, but are pressured into doing so. The environment of Rapture is indivisible from what makes BioShock woke, because without the external pressure splicers face, through incessant plasmid marketing, job insecurity, and an unsympathetic ruling class, they would not turn to drugs to survive. It's not as simple as they chose to splice, so therefore they deserve what they get. But acknowledging this nuance can have people being accused of being woke when really they're just voicing that most societal issues rarely are black and white. See, having the right plasmid can make the difference between being able to work late by powering through with a shot of sport boost or not, between getting an acting role thanks to a slimmed down gene tonic or not, or just meaning you can keep up with the Joneses. So splicers can be found in every social group, having been used, masticated and spat out by Rapture. BioShock shows that every class was affected by Rapture's toxic culture, and this acknowledgement of the knock-on impacts of the economic policy that led to its decay is woke. No one escapes unmarred. You either die because of Rapture's civil war by starvation or lack of medical care, for example, are killed by a splicer when trying to survive the civil war, or become a splicer yourself. First, there's Rosebud, the blue-collar Hungarian immigrant who came to Rapture for a better life. She was lured to Rapture in its second recruitment wave, after the first wave of upper-class auteurs didn't want to do blue-collar work. Lured by the promise of a new start, like others, Rosebud arrived and found Rapture wasn't what it was sold as. But now, like everyone else, she's trapped because you are forbidden from leaving Rapture once you arrive. Rosebud's daughter was kidnapped to become a little sister. Little sisters harvest Adam from dead splicers, recycle them using the sea slug in their stomach lining, and are then operated on to remove the Adam so it can be sold to splicers all over again. Rapture's private plasmid companies needed young girls to host the sea slugs. Orphans were used at first, but then gradually they ran out, and little girls began to be abducted from families of every class and every nationality.
Please, you don't want my girl. She's no use to you. Can't you take the neighbor's girl instead?
Children being separated from their parents has, chillingly, only become more relevant since BioShock came out. The real-life parallels are hard to ignore, but weren't public when BioShock came out in 2007, if this came out not just this year, but in the past decade. The reaction Rosebud could garner is easy to imagine. On the younger side, Baby Jane came to Rapture to be a star on stage and screen, but didn't get the opportunities she expected. With no money coming in via the theatre, she's had to resort to subsistence or survival sex work to get by, is implied to have been promised roles in exchange for sexual favours, and has been essayed. Like an influencer, actress or model who moves to somewhere like Hollywood for their big break, Baby Jane came to Rapture with high, maybe naive, hopes, and others use this naivete to exploit and take advantage of her, plying her with empty promises.
Call me a whore? How dare you? I'm an actress.
The other interpretation of Baby Jane is as the person who turns to something like OnlyFans out of desperation. Although the media and certain websites might paint sex work as glamorous, for many of the voiceless it is a case of last resort survival, the only means of making money when access to jobs is limited. And finally, there's the brute Splicer. He's built like a shit brick house, and underneath all that muscle and flesh is a gay man. Closeted in a homophobic society, he overcompensates with rampant internalised and externalised homophobia, backing it up with thuggery and violence to appear straight. Rippling with muscles and towering over others, the brute uses plasmids that increase his brawn to distance himself physically from stereotypical ideas of what gay men look like. This isn't just my speculation. Jordan Thomas, creative director of BioShock 2, revealed in an interview with Games Radar that the brute is ashamed and scared of their own homosexuality in Rapture's intolerant socio-political climate. Under the hypnotised plasmid, he starts to voice his inner self.
I'd look a puff in that suit, but you carry it.
However, if you sneak up on him and listen to what he says when he's free of any hypnotism or aggression, he says,
Can't have a proper mate without accusations. It's all over their faces. Never have the guts to say it.
The brute Splicer fears persecution if his queerness is discovered, and it is the manifestation of a very real phenomenon demonstrated in a 1996 study, which proved that certain homophobic men can be closeted, using hatred to mask their own queerness, whether they do so consciously or not. Acknowledging and sympathetically depicting queer struggles, let alone queer trauma, is woke, no matter what kind of body and internalised homophobia it's wrapped up in. But not all splicers are victims. Some are just awful, terrible people. But they do still make us aware of societal issues in Rapture, only from the viewpoint of the perpetrators, and not the victims. Toasty is a whiny incel creep who assaults women.
You gotta be rich down here to meet a lady. They don't care how nice you are. Who was she? Your sister? Your cousin? I don't give a shit.
And Ladysmith is a racist white rich lady who says stuff like this.
Charles, I think the Negro cook's been stealing. It's always like that with the coloreds. Take.
So yeah, I don't feel bad about shooting those splicers in the face, either with elements or bullets. Splicers represent the inequalities in society and by proxy make you, the player, aware of those inequalities in Rapture and how they harm citizens. You might even recognise similarities between the circumstances splicers found themselves in and the real world. BioShock calls us as players to be woke by trying to engage our critical thinking through how BioShock portrays Rapture. So perhaps it's more accurate to say that splicers make you woke, because it's impossible to avoid hearing how they became splicers through their lore-heavy voice lines. Zoom out from the splicers and the entire game itself, right down to the announcements that chime overhead, is woke. These tragic splicers were lured down into Rapture and met with a society and economy who didn't give a damn about them. Hell, the entire backstory can be interpreted as a metaphor for the opioid crisis or a criticism of laissez-faire economics. Then there's the lesson that we should be skeptical of larger-than-life industry figureheads with cults of personality just scuttling around them. Andrew Ryan created Rapture to cater to his own beliefs, but as his beliefs are idealistically selfish, he has the audacity to be surprised when everything collapses around him. Because who could have possibly known that if you have a system without a social safety net, labour laws, or regulations which a democratically elected government monitors, it doesn't take long for a society to fall into chaos. Ryan outlawed unions, shelters, charities, and legalised any kind of business as long as it made money, apart from smuggling, which threatened his control over Rapture by bringing in topside influences, so of course Ryan's needs were the exception. Central to Rapture's economy and overall ethos is Ryan's idea of the Great Chain, an individualistic system where people's self-interest naturally stimulates the economy, and each person's welfare is their own responsibility. In practice, this causes the downfall of Rapture, as with no restriction on what products you can sell, or research you can do, or how much you can exploit employees, you end up with everyone, except those at the tippy top, being fed up and ready to revolt. And then they actually do revolt, and you have a civil war. With the cost of living crisis going on at the moment in both the UK and the US, along with all the other divisive political factors around the world, although thankfully we don't have access to plasmids, BioShock is perhaps feeling more relevant now than it was in 2007. BioShock was a game ahead of its time, and yes, it is woke, and only becomes more woke the more time you spend listening to the sounds of splicers in the leaky, dirty, depressing remains of Rapture.
Is a man not entitled to the sweat of his brow? No, says the man in Washington, it belongs to the poor. No, says the man in the Vatican, it belongs to God. No, says the man in Moscow, it belongs to everyone. I rejected those answers. Instead, I chose something different. I chose the impossible. I chose Rapture. A city where the artist would not fear the censor, where the scientist would not be bound by petty morality, where the great would not be constrained by the small. And with the sweat of your brow, Rapture can become your city as well.
So, if you've made it this far, do you agree? When you played it, did you find yourself wondering about what it would have been like to live in Rapture's golden age, as either the great or the small? I personally was terrified of Rapture and still find it more of a horror game than an action game, which I think tells you how I feel about the idea of living there. Let me know in the comments, and if you liked this video, please like it so I can continue to make more videos about games that came out way too long ago, and subscribe to Eurogamer for more videos about video games almost every single day. Now, I'm going to go and reread my BioShock concept art book, so I'll see you folks next time.